Several major international brands have started a boycott on sales of their goods in Russia. Among the companies to have withdrawn their services and product lines are H&M, Smirnoff, Apple, Facebook, Co-op and even M&S. Is this another important element of sanctions to diminish Vladimir Putin's support at home, or a worthless virtue signalling gesture that hurts ordinary Russians? What do you think about this, Portia? Because it just strikes me as a little bit virtue signalling by these corporations. Oh, aren't we such nice people? We're going to cancel Smirnoff vodka.
Yeah, I think it's a bit ridiculous, to be quite honest. And if you've bought the vodka, you might as well sell it and let people drink it.
Yeah.
Or let people decide if they want to buy it. And surely it's more powerful an image having shelves full of vodka and the gin all gone and letting people decide for themselves rather than it be topped out.
I agree. I mean, look, we loathe what Putin is doing. I want him out of Ukraine. It's barbaric. I think war crimes are being committed as we speak. It's a horrific nightmare. But, A, we don't want to hurt the people of Russia who didn't start this war. But also it's got echoes of Ben and Jerry's for me with the sort of migrant issue. Do you know what I mean? It's the big corporations just demonstrating how lovely they are, how groovy they are. Don't you think?
I think it is, and I do get the whole idea of showing solidarity, especially on this issue. Ukraine is being invaded. But there comes a point, and I think it's just a little bit on the nose, a bit virtue signally.
Sam Dowler, it's the gesture generation.
It's not a gesture. It's all of the companies that, that we come to know and love. Like, the point is, of course, it is horrible.
You don't love H&M, do you?
I do, actually, yeah.
I thought you were a bit classier than H&M.
I am classy as well, but, they're good for essentials.
If I was you, I don't think you're anywhere below Zara, but that's just...
But I just think that it's like with the Russian, Belarusian athletes as well. It is... Collectively, if everybody comes together, which is what we're doing, we're making the Russian people see that obviously they don't want this, but you have to blame, Putin, basically. So they all turn against Putin. That is the whole point of it. So unless their lives are irreparably changed, which is what's happening, and they can't even go out into the streets to protest this, but they certainly will. This is like you were saying earlier. It's the end of Putin. And at the end of the day, if their lives are so altered and like beyond all recognition that they can't get anything they love, anything they want, then of course they will have to rise up. And that is the whole point. The West want the people of Russia to rise up and push him out.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder whether everything is a gesture these days. I mean, look at Chris Bryant, right, Labour MP, nice guy, by the way. Well, no, he's a decent guy. I've interviewed him once or twice, a principled man. But he tweeted, every winning athlete at the Paralympics and every other sporting event this year should ask for the Ukrainian national anthem to be played instead of their own, so that Russia hears it time and time again.
Well,
What's that going to do? Make a blind bit of difference.
Yeah, look, you and I disagree on Chris Bryant, and I'm fine with that because I don't sit up at night thinking about him. But I do think.
Well, he is the screensaver on my phone. I'm not going to lie.
And a stone cold hottie as well.
Now, I'm not going to say anything, but we all remember which photo, right?
Yes,
we all remember that photo.
Correct.
Right, Y-fronts. Anyway,
very compromising position, let me tell you.
It wasn't compromising. It was Y-fronts. Right? It wasn't compromising. It was just bad. It was just bad.
Listen, there's a lot of photos of me floating around the internet. We've got to move on.
I will say something that I think you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I'm fine by criticising people for being woke. Yep. I'm fine with criticising people for virtue signalling. But number one, Vladimir Putin's government is a criminal operation. I think we all agree on that. How on earth can you sell to a country where there is no proper rule of law and it's a criminal state? Not so much of a concern for Smirnoff. Bear in mind that they're a Western brand that bought the name off the Smirnoff family.
Is that right?
Yeah, and the Smirnoff family. The Smirnoff family continue to make vodka in Russia.
Please don't tell me Foster's isn't Australian.
No, but I'll tell you the good example. The good example is the Budweiser family of Czechoslovakia are now making Budweiser that they export around the world. They came to a deal with Allied Demek that around the world they call it Budvar.
Oh, I see.
Anyway.
That's right. Berghaus, the winter garment company, that's British, but they just came up with a German name because it sounded Like,
Nando's as well. Nando's is not Portuguese; it's South African.
What about my favourite was
nothing's real anymore.
Fake news.
Dixon's own brand for years was called Matsui because they said people trust Japanese delis.
They all got a Matsui cassette player, but you can't get GB News Radio on it, sadly.
but on a serious note, we rail against the cancel culture. We rail against virtue signalling. But you know, this is a war, and it's an unprovoked war. And we've got a guy who is, I mean, it's madness, going on TV claiming that a Jewish president is a neo-Nazi who is killing people on the streets. It's just bonkers, ridiculous nonsense. And do you know what? I wouldn't want to sell to them.
What can we, Sam, as British citizens do at this stage? I mean, do we vote with our feet? Do we, you know, stop buying Russian products? Should we get on Twitter and send angry tweets? What can we do as Brits?
Well, actually, what we can do at the moment is you can book Airbnb in Ukraine. That is one thing we can do at the moment, and people are doing it all.
I would say it's very, very cheap at the moment.
All over the place. No, but obviously you're not going to go, but it's a good way of getting money to the people who are there.
Is that how you do it? So that's a way of getting money?
It's happening right now, today.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's a brand new thing.
So you book a two-bedroom apartment
I'm sure
in Kyiv?
Yeah, basically for 2 weeks, wherever you pay the money that they ask for, or you pay above the odds. And loads of friends of mine have done it.
That's
it's all on my
amazing.
Facebook feed. It's a way of getting money directly to them without going through any other channel. But I mean, that's a very small thing we can do. But
sounds like a huge thing to me.
But exactly.
British Red Cross, of course.
And if you think about it, like every nation in the world was doing that, you're giving money to the people that need it.
I'll tell you one thing, Sam, that we came up with a few years ago, which people do not understand the power of it. The Disaster Emergency Committee, this DEC, which most people are like, well, what the hell is it? It is really good. It has all the infrastructure ready, and when it goes go, which it's done now, it can fund lots of infrastructure straight away. And so it just makes it easier to know where to donate. And the D's, we'll put the number up. No, I'm joking. We'll put the number up at the bottom.
Not telethon.
I must say, full credit to the Mail newspaper and The Sun, who have run fantastic campaigns to raise money for people in Ukraine. British Red Cross, I'm sure there are lots and lots of opportunities.
By the way, well done to Turkey for sending the drones over very quickly.
By the way,
those drones...
Yeah, and I bet they're loving those German helmets as well. They'd be lost without those helmets.
It's just great to see everybody pulling together.
Yeah,
like, I know how you were saying, like, it is, might be virtue signalling, etc. But this is what I was saying, was that if everybody is doing it across the board, that is what makes the massive amount of impact.
This is the thing. Vladimir Putin is a schoolyard bully. And by the way, there's going to be loads of people watching this show who are going to say they don't want Ukraine to join the EU and NATO. I don't want them to join the EU and NATO either. But it's about... Well, no, it's about free choice. I voted to leave the European Union because I believe that we're a free and independent country. If a free and independent country wishes to join the EU, but Vladimir Putin is a schoolyard bully. We've wiped the smile off his face. He'd stockpiled 350 billion in the Russian central bank, and he thought we'd never freeze the assets. Even Switzerland froze the assets. They've never done anything other than chocolate making and clocks.
Can we not use the metaphor? Can we not use the metaphor as oh, I'm Switzerland? Can we not use that?
Switzerland now, right?
Is that over?
Taking sides. Absolutely.
Why did you do an impersonation of Noel Gallagher when you said you were Switzerland?
Well, he's Switzerland.
Proper Switzerland now, me.
I don't know. Well, you tell me.
So how do we see this playing out? What's our latest feeling about how this conflict is playing out? What do you think, Sam?
I think it's a disaster.
Are we in it for the long haul, do you think?
I don't know. I think it's a disaster for Putin, as we were discussing before. There's been some sort of stalling. They haven't surrounded Kiev like they thought they were going to be able to. And so I think this has been a disaster on every single front for Putin. And even though he's shouted nuclear this, nuclear that, like he's basically, like, his cabinet, everything around him is crumbling.
Even China have turned their back on him.
Exactly, and I think, I think it's over for him, like, either from his people or from the rest of the world. I hope and pray that it isn't going to be a horrible, some sort of genocide in Kyiv, and that basically we are going to have to sit back and watch them destroy Kyiv. I mean, I'm hoping that's not going to happen, because how long would we be able to sit by and observe that without doing something about it?
Well, yes. Portia, how do you see this playing out? What's your best guess?
I think that's fair. I think things are... I mean, they've definitely not been as successful as they hoped. Putin's not been waging war with all, as what as he would have wanted. But at the same time, we can't say come the end that it's H&M that saved the day. I think that's just a bit preposterous.
Yeah.
We have to actually maintain
I think anybody was saying that. As I say, it was
Andre, you cheered up my viewers last weekend when you said that you think that he'll have, actually Putin will have completely lost power within a month.
Yeah.
Certainly lost this conflict. Do you stand by that?
Yeah, I do. I think the concern is, and this is something I keep banging on about. You know, I never knew this phrase, fire and forget, until this conflict. But these Javelin missiles that we're sending people, just to explain to anyone who hasn't watched me talk about this before, you bluntly point, you roughly point it in the right direction, pull the trigger, discard it, and it will find the target itself. That cost Vladimir Putin most of his parachute regiment in the early days, but you can put them in. Here is one concern I've got, and I'm not as positive as I was last week. For you, Mark, I do some reading. And I was reading
God bless you.
The Red Army tactics from the old Soviet Union. And their tactics, believe it or not, are to send in lightly armed conscripts to start with and allow them to die, and then send the more heavily armed troops in later, establish a surrounding point 15 miles from the centre of town, and then shell it to, I was about to use the S word, and then send in your elite. Unfortunately, they have stopped 15 miles outside Kiev.
Yeah, deeply troubling.